Well, I'm sure that some others will be joining us still, but we might begin with just first of all, a warm word of welcome. It's so good to have you all with us this year. It's so good to share with you. Thank you so much for taking the time for this. And also just a brief devotional word. Today is the day of William Reed Huntington, a priest who died in 1909. And he is best known for what we call the Chicago Lambeth Quadrilateral, which you can find in the historic section of your prayer book, which gets consulted on those extremely rare occasions when the sermon in the Episcopal Church is kind of dull and people start flipping through their prayer book. We think of it now as sort of defining the nature of Anglicanism. It talks about the one book of Holy Scriptures. It talks about the two creeds. It talks about the two historic sacraments, baptism and Eucharist. And it talks about the church ordered under an episcopate, though that's adapted to the localities according to the quadrilateral. But the intent of it actually was to create a formula for Christian union. William Reed Huntington was very upset by the divisions of Christianity into so many denominations, and particularly in the United States. And he had read Jesus's prayer in John 17 that they all may be one, and he really wanted to do all that he could to bring Christians back together. And actually, that has become widely accepted as sort of the ecumenical basis for moving forward with Christian union. So it's a helpful reminder for me at the start of our year that we are an ecumenical organization. We welcome people from a variety of denominations. We're so glad we have members of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America studying with us. We've had Baptists. We've had members of the United Church of Christ. Those are the only ones I'm aware of so far. But we are open really to any Christians who would want to study with us, because we do believe that that the Episcopal Church, though we all love it, is not the one true church. It is part of the larger Jesus movement in the body of Christ. So if you would pray with me as we use the collect for William Reed Huntington. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. O Lord our God, we thank you for instilling in the heart of your servant William Reed Huntington a fervent love for your church and its mission in the world. And we pray that with unflagging faith in your promises, we may make known to all people your blessed gift of eternal life. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. Okay, let's turn to business for tonight. In many ways, what we're going to talk about, I'll just tell you right away, is not scintillating. Okay, it's not the most interesting thing we'll ever talk about, but it is very important that we pay careful attention to it, because when we're familiar with policies and procedures at BKSM, it makes our life together much smoother for everybody. And this is actually the 9th year of the operation of Bishop Kemper School, my 8th year as dean. So we've had time to refine through trial and error, through experience. We continue to make adjustments as needed, but we have a pretty good sense of how things work best by now. Wouldn't you agree, Casey? And so we want to share that with you, just so you're informed about the best ways to do things that will make life better for everybody. Before we actually move to the document that we have, you can always find this on your BKSM website under Student Resources. Am I right about that, Casey? I think you go to that tab that says Student Resources, it will have the policies and procedures. So you can refer to this at any time. And at any time you have questions, of course, you can contact me about that. But before I move to those, I would sort of like to begin just by kind of a description of what kinds of things do you go to Casey about? What kinds of things would you go to Deacon Fran about? And what kind of things would you go to me about? And let me just begin by saying the great majority of things you go to me about. I'm the only full-time employee of BKSM. I like being contacted by students for on various subjects. That's why they pay me the big bucks, haha. But I have been a theological educator full-time since the fall of 1992. This is by far the most enjoyable job that I've had of the three major jobs that I held for extended periods of time. And so the first thing I would want you to be clear about is never worry, oh, should I bug the dean or not? Should I bother the dean with this? Yes, that's the answer. If you feel like it's something that concerns you, feel free to contact me. And the best way to do that is email. I may be a dinosaur now, but email is what works for me. And so, because often I'm in meetings and so forth, so I may not be able to call you back very soon, but I can usually respond to emails within a day or two at most. And we can set up a time to talk as needed and so forth. So please keep that in mind. But I thought it might be helpful for you to have a sense of the things that you go to Casey about and the things that you go to Deacon Fran about. So you want to start, Casey, just sort of describing what kind of things would they go to you for first?
Well, now that Deacon Fran is on board, I'm not sure what the best answer to that question is, because a lot of what she now does, I used to handle. So I would say, though, as your colloquium facilitator, like if you're in need of some pastoral care, you can always reach out to me. Of course, the dean is also a good person for that. But I am one you can always go to with that. If you see something wrong with the website, you come to me. If you see something that you'd like to promote to other students, you come to me as Director of Communications. It's one hat that I wear. And Don sometimes calls me Dean of Students because of that student interface. I spend that is really, I think, one of the best parts of my call to Bishop Kemper School is that I get to spend time with all of you and listen to you and your needs. So if it's communication, if it's web or Facebook or email related, you can come to me if it's sort of publicity related. And also if you are a first year student in particular and need of some pastoral care, I'm
just support.
Mutual support. Yeah. Anything else you'd add to that, Don?
I'd say that this year you're handling our catering as well.
That's
and
right.
So if students have any dietary concerns, we want to make sure our food is meeting the needs of all of our students. So we can adjust the menus as we go along, and you interface with the caterer. So that would be one thing I would think of right away.
Right. Yeah, that's a new one this year.
And also, Casey, with lots of volunteer help from her wonderful spouse, Eric, are our tech people in terms of the classroom, especially with the Zoom hookup to people who can't be physically present there.
Right.
So they are just really good at the tech that supports our teaching.
And if there's ever a problem sort of during your weekend and the instructor's like, I don't know what to do, but the answers come by me. That's always step number one.
As we begin to have Eucharist every month, starting in August, we'll be recruiting some acolytes and so forth. And Mother Casey knows the sacristy at the cathedral.
Right. Don, you're so right. I didn't even think of that. Right. So chief sacristan for our Eucharists. Yep.
I hope you can tell from all this that Mother Casey and Deacon Fran are very part-time employees. They do 10 hours a week, but they are the most efficient and productive part-time employees in the history of the world. Okay. And we're very fortunate, but we want to make sure that we don't impose on them too much too, because they do, after all, technically only have 10 hours a week to devote. I know it's sometimes more than that, but I try to not take advantage of them too much. Let me give my sense of what you go to Deacon Fran about, in case you may think of something to add. Deacon Fran is our registrar. That means that you would talk to me as your academic advisor about your course of studies, and we'd agree to that together. But actually enrolling in the classes, she does. So you can always check with her. Am I signed up? She already has I think everyone's scheduled for the whole year now. So you can at any time say, hey, could you give me a list of the 10 classes I'm taking this year, or whatever it may be. I know in some cases it's less than 10. And she will have that. She's also then keeper of the transcripts. Now, the faculty are supposed to submit the grade the last day of the month following your class. So for instance, you're going to take a class in August, Christian spirituality or preaching for lay people or whatever it may be. Those grades are supposed to be in at the end of September. And we tell the faculty to send you that grade and to give you a few evaluative comments. But they're very busy, they're adjuncts, and so sometimes they slip and you don't get your grade. The grade's been submitted to us, but you haven't heard it. So always feel free to say to Deacon Fran, hey, I'd like to have a copy of my transcript. She just, attaches to an email and off it goes. So you always know where you stand. Another thing that she does is keep track of student tuition payments. So she can tell you where your account stands. And we'll talk more about tuition in a little while. But she's the one that keeps the record of what has come in on student tuition. She's also our coordinator for Upton this year. It looks like for the first time in a long, long time, we may have more people that would like to be in Upton than we actually have space for some months this year. And so she'll establish her rota to make sure that everybody has an equal turn at staying at Upton. And so if you have that interest, you need to make sure to let her know, and she'll keep the list, and she decides, how the rooms are distributed. She sent something out, I think, last week before she went on vacation. She's out in California this week. But one thing that she left off of that was if you could let her know if you're okay with a top bunk, because we do have, that does increase our capacity up to, I think, 4 beds. And it's helpful for her to know that. Anything else? Those are things that just right off the top of the bat come to mind. She mails out your completion certificates eventually, and so she's the person that does that. That's something you'll deal with at the end of your time here. Anything else, Casey, that you can think of right off?
No, that sounds like a good overview.
So notice that everything else that's not been mentioned comes to me. I'm everybody's an academic advisor. I receive the checks in the mail and deposit them in the bank, et cetera, et cetera. I'm both the president and the academic dean. We don't have 2 people like they do a lot of schools now. And I'm a member of the faculty as well. So never, like I said, just never hesitate. Oh, I should have bugged the dean. The answer is always yes. Okay. And like as long as in my email, I can respond to you pretty quickly. Okay. Do feel free to raise questions anytime anything isn't clear, either now or later. Dodie, do you have your hand up? Just a wave there. I'm sorry, you're muted.
No, it's just a little thing that keeps popping up.
That's nice. It's a friendly gesture. Thank you. Okay, if you
So I am going to put a question in the chat about hospitality, and so if I'm going to just put it up there so you can answer it. So we always have soft drinks available and water and tea and coffee, as you saw. But if there is a particular soft drink that you can't live without, that you would like us to stock, let us know, because we can arrange for that. So have at it as Don continues to talk.
We have fresh water always there. It could be both hot and cold, but and I always prefer, caffeine-free, sugar-free drinks myself. But yeah, anything that you like, let us know. Thank you, Casey. Casey sent you the link to the policy and procedures statement, but I think you can also get up on the screen, right, Casey? Cool. It's done alphabetically, which will scramble things just a little bit, but I hope it'll be a way to get through the material. As that is coming up, let me just say the first topic is admittance. You all have been admitted already, so you don't have to worry about this anymore. But it is important for you to understand maybe our policy that anybody is free to take any class at BKSM. And you'll have people in class that are doing what we call personal enrichment. They just are interested in the subject and they've decided they want to do this as a follow-up to education for ministry or whatever it is. But if you're going to go on an ordination track, you need to have the permission of your bishop. And if you're going to be on one of the lay tracks, lay preaching, lay evangelism, we really urge you to get the support of your rector and vestry. And that's because we want you to actually be deployed in those gifts when you finish that certificate. We don't want you to just get a preaching license and then they have no intention to, to use you. So that's the reason for that. Stop, like I said, stop me anytime you have questions. In terms of assessment, we use the normal grading system. We have had people in the past that use satisfactory and unsatisfactory, but as far as I know, no current faculty member uses that. What I would want to say here, above all, is please don't sweat grades, okay? Do your best, learn what you need to learn, and don't worry about it, because unless you decide to transfer BKSM work to Claremont School of Theology and finish an MDiv with them, the grades really don't matter. And even then they don't matter. I mean, they would just want to see that you've gotten credit more than anything else. And we're not a program from which people go on to do a doctorate or anything. So grades, and most of your commissions on ministry don't expect you to have a high grade point average. They just expect you to have passed the subjects. So we all tend to be, perfectionists and everything, but I really encourage you not to sweat grades at BKSM. Try to just focus on the learning and enjoy it. Does that make sense? We hope that all assignments will be submitted on time. That's best for everybody, but we know that stuff happens. You get sick, you have a car wreck, there's a sick parent or whatever. And so as the key, when you can't get assignments in on time, is to communicate with your instructor and with the dean. So we are aware of it, that we can be supportive. And you'll find that the fact they're just very willing to work with you in making the necessary accommodations. And even, sometimes you have to miss a whole month's class because a graduation or a wedding or something, and then work with me as your academic advisor, and we can usually find a way to make that up, okay? Attendance has been a pretty mundane subject in the past. This year it could get interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, because we now have the capacity for everybody to join a class by Zoom. So no matter where you are in the world, you can take part in that class. But just as it's happening at our parish churches, that is a temptation sometimes to say, I'd just rather stay at home in my pajamas, and work at home. And we really encourage you, if at all possible, to come to Topeka because of the community aspect, worshiping together. The time talking in the halls over the break is sometimes where the greatest learning goes on, truly. There's just so much you miss when you're not there in person. Now, some of you have heard the Center for Disease Control's new guidelines today. There may be times when we need to be in class with masks on. We'll see. Our policy is to go by what the cathedral is doing, because the cathedral houses us, and so we'll follow whatever they do. But that will again tempt some of us to say, well, I'd just rather sit at home and do it by Zoom in. But please, it's always better to be there in person, if at all possible. The Zoom option is there for people who live at such a distance that coming to Topeka would really be, like taking 2 days out of their life kind of thing, Any questions about that? Because this is going to be an important one this year, I think. It's good that we have that Zoom capacity, but we don't want that to take the place of sharing face-to-face.
Don, I would add that with our new sort of revamped schedule this year, with praxis and colloquium moving
Yes.
away from the weekend to online on Zoom, as we discussed during the retreat, that praxis will always be the Tuesday following our focus weekend,
Mhm.
and colloquium usually the Tuesday following that. So 2 Tuesdays in a row following our focus weekend. Those will be both on Zoom, and those are mandatory. You're expected to show up for those things. We understand life happens and there are also conflicts there, but your participation in those 2 Zoom events every month, on top of being present, is part.
You froze up. Yeah. Let me just kind of continue what I think my good colleague's thought is here. Our Saturday nights are going to be more relaxed. We'll have community events. We'll have some spiritual events. In August, we'll talk about worship at BKSM and go through our customary how we do daily office and Eucharist at BKSM. So some people, especially those that live closer, may be tempted. Oh, I'm going to go home Saturday night. Please don't. That time together is less structured, more relaxed than it's been in the past, but it continues to be extremely important. Okay, so yeah, also be present there Saturday evenings. When don't take the night off. You know, the community is going to be really important there. Okay. Well, I think with Casey's having problems with her systems, we also lost our visual, but I think I can just kind of go over this verbally until we get that back up again.
She's coming up.
There you go.
Sorry, of course,
no problem.
I've got no bandwidth tonight. Okay,
Oh,
bring it back up.
Thank you, Casey. The next one is one that we added some years after we began as a result of some conflicts that we'd had. And let me say that most of the time at BKSM, we have very few conflicts. We tend to really get along. We tend to be a very friendly atmosphere. But once in a while, you know, stuff does happen. Someone gets offended by a comment in class. Someone feels that they were unfairly treated, either by a fellow student or by a faculty member. And believe me, it is our absolute policy that there will be no retaliation for raising a concern. Okay, so if you say, hey, this faculty member said something I found very offensive, that you will not be at all penalized for bringing that up. That is absolutely against our ethos. But what we encourage you to do is go to the party that did the offense first. Speak with the person directly. So if a fellow classmate made some joke that you found offensive, tell them. Okay. If an instructor did something that you thought was improper, tell them. You know, and it's only if you feel like they blew you off or weren't listening that you then go to the dean, right? You only go to the dean if the conflict remains unresolved. We're doing this not just for the better, for the community, sake of the community within BKSM, but to set a model for how things should be in the church. Indirect communication is a big problem in the Christian church. People talk behind each other's backs, right? And that destroys trust, and it instead of deflating conflict, it worsens it. This is a very bad habit the church has, and we're trying to model a different way of doing things where we are not conflict avoided, but feel free to say to one another, hey, you know, that really kind of offended me, and here's why, so that we have an openness of communication and that we all feel comfortable being who we are and having a diversity of views and so forth, right? On a very few occasions in the past, students have taken a matter without speaking to me, without speaking to their peer, without speaking to the instructor, directly to their bishop. Okay, now we get along very well with the bishops at BKSM. That's one of the things I love about my work here. I have never seen our bishops so closely involved with the work of a school as they are BKSM. I love all of our sponsoring bishops, but when a report is given to them, it's always out of context and can very easily lead to misunderstanding. It also tends to destroy trust. We feel like somebody went and tattled on us, you know, when we weren't even given a chance to present our side of the picture. And so we're not saying, you know, never, you know, share things of concern, but always go to the party that is directly involved first, okay? And again, we really feel like this is the mature and better way for communications to happen in the church, and to break through the habits of conflict avoidance that have so often served the church so poorly. Any questions about this? This is really important. This may be the most important single thing on this list in terms of how we function as a community. Any questions or comments at all? And remember, no one need fear retaliation for raising a concern. Never.
I thought if it's okay, might comment that a lot of times when people are advised to go to the person that you're having conflict with first, they can have anxiety over that.
Sure.
So I would just like to offer that while that is a very difficult thing, we can all remember that it is most likely, not always, but most likely a simple misunderstanding that
Most
with
cases.
dialogue can be
Right.
resolved. So
Yes.
as difficult as it is, it's not impossible. And
Right.
I'd also like to offer that it's okay before you do that, if you're having anxiety about that, to talk about that with someone you trust.
In a pastoral and confidential way, absolutely. Yeah.
So don't be afraid to talk to each other, because I know a lot of us are.
Yeah, the vast majority of times people say, oh my gosh, I did not mean to offend you. That's really not what I intended. I'm so sorry. No, that's not what I meant. That's the vast majority of cases. You're right, Ryan. But you know, we are going to be leaders in the church, and so we have to have some courage too, right? We have to build up leadership skill of confronting issues, and this is one of the ways we learn that. Good point, Ryan. Thank you very much. Other comments or questions about this? I just don't want there to be a climate of fear at all at BKSM. Nobody should be worried about speaking their truth, you know? Well, if anything about this comes up in your thoughts, hearts later, we can return to it. We don't evaluate courses every month, but we do periodically because we want to have a check-in as to how our students are responding to our instructional efforts. And so when you do get an email from SurveyMonkey asking you to evaluate a class, please do that promptly. You know, the whole time I've been here, we get like a 50% response rate. And especially in smaller classes, that means that the results are quickly insignificant. We can't even make any real assessments. So when we do a course evaluation, please respond, take the time. They only take like 5 minutes, right? And it really helps us to get some data points, especially if someone's instructing for the first time. You know, we want to give them some feedback. We want to continually assess our own efforts, do the very best job we can. And so you can really help us when you respond to a course evaluation. Like I said, stop me anytime with questions or comments. We've already had questions about disabilities. We're not technically under the law here, but we act like we are in all respects. So if you have a physical, psychological, learning disability, so-called, whatever it is, we will do our darnest to make accommodations. What's important again here is communication, that you let the dean know, that you let the instructor know, and they can work something out. Okay, we want to make sure that no one feels excluded because of, you know, sight or hearing or the way you process material or the length of time it takes you to process material, etc. Right? That to us is just the baptismal covenant of, you know, respecting the dignity of all persons. period. You'll find that we are doing our darnest to be a green community. We, as you noted already, those of you at the retreat, we don't use styrofoam, or very limited use of it. Try not to use it at all. We have our own dishes, we have our own cups, we have our own silverware, we have our own dishwasher. We have a big water source so that we don't need to use bottled water. Try not to. We try to recycle whenever we can. Topeka is not necessarily all together with this, but we can find ways to do it. And we welcome any and all suggestions about how we can reduce our environmental footprint, how we can not negatively impact the earth. It's one of the top 3 goals of the Episcopal Church's current mission is to care for the earth, and we want to really live that out at BKSM. Okay.
I would add that the movement away from styrofoam and plastic, so purchasing our own dishes and buying our a water bottle, all those things came from student ideas. Every single one of them.
Yes. Amen. And you'll see that we try to use paper as little as possible. So when we send you a syllabus, it'll be electronic. If you feel like it helps you to print it, do so. But we will very rarely be handing things out in class. Okay, and that makes the next point really important. Like I said, email is our mode of communication. And so a couple of things are really important. One is that we have your updated email address at all times. If your email changes, please let us know ASAP so that you're getting all the information. Please read it just as soon as you can, and if it calls for response, respond just as quickly as you can. That is our main mode of communication that's ecologically friendly, and that for an old timer like me is very efficient. Okay. Etiquette is pretty basic stuff. Don't have sidebar conversations, don't interrupt people, etc. We just try to be polite and show respect and consideration for all people, right? There's bigger issues that we'll talk about a little bit later. Extensions are related to what was said before, right? If you feel that you've had a situation that's out of the ordinary, because of illness, job pressures, whatever, just communicate with the dean and the professor, and they always find a way to work things out, right? But the only time we run into problems is if we don't know about your situation. So feel free to communicate this as early as possible with your professor and with me, and we can be as helpful as possible. Okay. Financial aid. We are blessed now with an abundance of tuition funds. It is absolutely our commitment that nobody should not go to BKSM because they can't afford it. We just don't accept that. We'll find a way. There's the number one source of financial aid at BKSM is your own diocese. Each diocese is a little different. Western Kansas, and West Missouri pay 1/3 of all tuition for students on a certificate track. Last year, Iowa paid 100%. I don't know what Missouri does. Nebraska has other arrangements on their own that we're not privy to and don't need to be. There's also outside scholarship funds. The most generous have been the Daughters of the King and Episcopal Church Women. And surprisingly, another source for a lot of people is Masonic organizations. They have abundant scholarship money. Several of our students who have some tie to the Masons or to the Shriners have gotten significant scholarship money. But your parish often has a scholarship fund. You should be sure to check with them, because basically what we assume is that you'll pay 1/3, the parish will pay 1/3, and the diocese will pay 1/3. That's sort of the assumption that we operate under. It's not true in all cases, but in a number of cases, that's how it works out. But if all of that fails, let us know. And we have scholarships both for people on lay tracks and on ordained tracks. And we can find ways to make sure that you find this affordable. Okay. We've had people that have lost their jobs in the middle of a semester. No problem. We've made arrangements. Okay. So again, the thing is to let us know about your need as soon as possible so we can put you in the pool for consideration, but we'll let you know of our decision just as fast as we can. You know, our tuition covers our educational expenses only. Tuition doesn't go at all to our overhead, to my salary, to Casey's salary, Deacon Fran's salary. So, you know, our costs are pretty darn low and we can find ways to make it work, okay? Independent study should be done only in very rare cases where you just need to finish the program and you had to miss a class because of a special event like a wedding or whatever. And we in other words, an independent study is done when needed to make sure that you don't have to take longer in the program. But it's always a last resort because, as you learned in our retreat, we are very anal at BKSM. We believe in cohort learning. We believe that you learn more from your peers than you do from your faculty, and the faculty learn from you. So in an independent study, that all is much less likely to happen, right? Because you're on your own. So this is not at all our usual or normal way of proceeding, but it's there in special circumstances and special cases, okay? And again, it's a matter of communicating with the dean as early as possible, and then depending on the subject, then we'll talk to a faculty member, okay? Late submissions we've already discussed in terms of extensions and so on. Lodging, like I said earlier, just we need to know if you want to stay at Upton Hall, and if we are not able to accommodate everyone, we'll create a rotation this year so that everybody has equal access over the course of the year. And that's Deacon Fran's department. Some of you stayed in the Senate Luxury Suites last time for a retreat. Was it okay? Did it work out all right? Because of COVID, I haven't stayed there in like 19 months, and we had some reports that quality had slipped a little bit, but I know some of you stayed there, and I heard no complaints this time. Is that correct? So I'm going to stay there in August to check it out myself, but it's a really good rate, you know. And
Hey, Don.
Yeah.
I've got some other things to say about lodging, about Upton
Yeah.
Hall, while I've got a captive group.
Please.
As long as my bandwidth cooperates. A couple things. So over the last many, many years, BKSM has been the primary group of people staying. And we've sort of made it our home in some ways, such as maybe leaving our shampoo in the bathroom on purpose, right? And just using it from month to month. Beginning in September, there's going to be a new canon for spirituality and clergy care or something like, I think that's her title. Anyway, there will be many more retreats happening at Upton Hall from here on out. So a couple of things, and someone asked me this question before. We are going to have a BKSM tub. So if you have things that you would like to leave every month, you will be able to do so. But part of checkout is getting said things into the tub. If extra things remain in the bathrooms or tucked away somewhere, they will be probably tossed out. So we're going to work real hard to make it easy for you to leave things that you don't have to drag every month. Second of all, and it saddens me, we cannot leave alcohol in unopened or opened or otherwise, because sometimes we have high school students, right? So if you leave an open bottle of wine, it may go home with the innkeeper, which is fine. But it pains me that you're not leaving with your stuff. So please remember to take your alcohol with you, and any food in the refrigerator. There's just a little just some feedback from the diocese from this past week as we're starting to get back in the swing of being in Upton Hall.
Great. Thank you, Casey. Yeah, we're very blessed by Upton Hall. It's a very affordable place, you know, it's really nice, and it is kind of part of our campus almost, as it were, but we want to make sure and take good care of it, especially now it's going to be getting more multi-use. Other requirements for mentioned, you know, colloquium and praxis are also required. And it's also required that you serve on the liturgical rota, that you are a reader, that you preside at morning and evening prayer and noonday prayer and compline. Everybody's invited to praxis. Those are sessions of special interest on different topics. So everybody's certainly welcome, but it's absolutely required for persons on ordination tracks. Okay. We talked about plagiarism extensively last week, so no need to deal with that now. The next topic is what we call progress reports. You just need to know that we are canonically required to if you're on ordination track to give reports to your bishop. The first year, we're simply required to say doing fine or not, and 99.99% of the cases that always say is doing great, everything's fine. So it's a very brief letter in the first year. Sometime during the second year, we give a fuller report. There's a canonical form. I can show you a copy if you like, where they ask about, are you a regular participant in worship? Do you have qualities needed for leadership in the Episcopal Church and so forth? And so, again, in the vast majority of the cases, I'm just singing your praises and plugging you. I'm basically writing a recommendation letter, So I wouldn't want you to be, kind of anxious about this. But I do want you to know that we're canonically required to do that. And at the end of the second year in the case of deacons, and the third year in the case of priests, we are required to offer a recommendation for ordination, to say, yeah, we think this person should be ordained. I have not yet written one where I said we cannot recommend. It's not happened in all the time I've been at BKSM. Okay, so if people get to the third year or the second year in the case of deacons, they're on track, So again, this is something I really would not want you to be anxious about, but it is a canonical requirement that we report, to the bishop, and I wanted you to know that. Any questions about that or comments? Okay. Respect for all persons has been significantly modified since the murder of George Floyd. We are official signatories of the anti-racism covenant that was written by Bishop Dion Johnson of the Diocese of Missouri. It is the official policy of BKSM by vote of the Board of Trustees, nobody voting against, one abstention. So we are an anti-racism school in full accordance with the policies and procedures of the Episcopal Church USA. And so we address issues of race in classes and special discussions during praxis and so forth. Now, of course, we also talk about gender and sexual orientation, different ability, and so forth. So, but right now in the United States is a moment where we really need racial reconciliation. And we are committed to being part of that movement that will at last break the back of the demon that has afflicted this country for far too long and bring us into a new era. We have zero tolerance for sexual harassment or abuse, of any kind of discrimination, of comments that demean a person for any quality they may have. An anti-racism course is part of our curriculum for all people on ordination track at BKSM. So when you graduate from BKSM, you've had the canonically required, what used to be called anti-racism. I think we're now calling it more racial reconciliation. but that is a canonical requirement in the Episcopal Church, and we make sure that it's fulfilled by the time you graduate. And we also urge you to do the Safe Church certification, which is the anti-sexual abuse and so on. That can be done online. We can connect you to sources if your diocese doesn't have that ready at hand. And we ask that you present a certificate of completion of that prior to the reception of your certificate of completion at BKSM. Okay, so that respect for all persons, which is a part of our baptismal covenant, we take very seriously at BKSM. It's a fundamental part of who we are. Any questions or comments about that? The topic will come up for discussion at various points throughout your life at BKSM.
This is Sarah. I do have a question.
Yeah.
On the Safe Church certification, you say we need to have it before certification. So should we do it this year or wait till our second or third year?
I'd say as soon as possible, it's a good idea.
Okay.
But certainly before graduation. Right? So in your case, that'd be what, third year, right? In the case of deacons, the second year. Yeah.
And it's good for 5 years. So, so if you're a leader in your church, if you work at all with kids, if you work at all with visitation, it's good to have.
I'm about to renew my own. I did it 5 years ago, so mine is up for renewal.
Yep. I just redid mine. That's how I know. Right.
Mother Casey, I thought I got an email from Michael Funston saying it was only good for 3 years.
Oh, maybe it is 3 years.
Now.
Maybe 3 now.
I think they changed
It may have
it.
changed.
I think that tends to vary by diocese, so you need to check with your diocese there.
Okay.
It's not the same for
I was
each
just
diocese.
confused. I finished mine a few months ago, but
Right.
Michael, I'm pretty sure said it was
And there are
3.
many parts to it. It's an online program, but there's many parts to it, and different dioceses will specify, we want you to make sure to do this part, this part, this part. So it's really good for you to check with your diocesan officials on this. And I think I think to do the kind of work you do at St. Michael's, you'd have to do that, Ryan. So I'm sure you're okay. Just give us evidence of it.
Sorry. And once you're a priest or deacon, for those who are on the ordination track and in parish, there are extras. There are extras that you have to do as clergy. So the list grows longer.
Yeah. I think we talked about style guide, and when you talked about academic writing last week. Transcripts, I think we talked about already. We do send that as part of your report to your diocese. The diocese asks for a transcript every year, so that they and again, they're really not looking at the grades. They're wanting to know that you've completed, that you've passed the material. Let's talk about tuition. It's actually a little bit different this year. It's $210 when you're coming to Topeka. You're using food and allowing us to use Upton. If a person is coming in via Zoom, then it's $135. So that it just covers the the instructional cost of reimbursing the instructor and the technology that we have to use for Zoom. So it says 130 there, but that's actually been up to 135. We need to edit that, don't we, Casey?
Yep, I got it.
Yeah.
That happened. Yep.
And we ask you, whenever possible, to submit payment in full of each course prior to the class meeting, but remember that your diocese is paying a third, okay? And if you've gotten a commitment from your parish that they'll pay a third, you only need to pay a third, okay? So if you're in West Missouri, Kansas, or Western Kansas, 1/3 is already covered by your diocese. If you're in Iowa, my understanding is 100% is covered by your diocese, okay?
So Don, if you're in the Diocese of Kansas, is it covered a third as well?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is why I'm here, to learn this stuff.
Hallelujah. And we're deeply grateful for the generosity of the diocese. You know, without that, we wouldn't be where we are. The most important thing is to know where to send the check. Don't send it to Topeka. Don't send it to our office there. Send it to what we call BKSM East, which is my home in Lisa, Missouri. This is where I work every day, my home office. I'm in it right now. Look, here it is, BKSM East. And that allows me to promptly deposit the checks at the bank, which is just less than a mile from here, and to keep things up to date, okay? Try to keep track so that you're up to date, so we don't, one of the unpleasant tasks at the end of every year is that I don't like so much as being bill collector and have to tell people, oh, you still owe this and this. So try to keep up, you know, and stay current so we don't get into a situation where you've finished your coursework but there's still a balance due, okay? I think that's about it, right? The withdrawal, I think, is self-explanatory. No need to say anything about that. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you have questions about? Is there anything that we did cover that you have questions about?
Don?
Yeah. Lori? Yeah.
Oh, do we have to make arrangements with the diocese to have the 1/3 of our tuition paid, or is that an automatic thing?
Automatic.
Okay, great.
I bill them,
Okay.
and it's taken care of. Like I said, Nebraska does things differently, so I can't speak for Nebraska. We've always gotten either full amounts from the students or 1/3 from a parish and the rest from the student. So I don't know what the diocese may arrange privately with students up there. I know that there's scholarship funds that are unique to Nebraska that exist, that people can apply for, but we don't get any money from Nebraska for 1/3 of tuition. But in Western Kansas and West Missouri, we do. It's automatic. And like I said, in Iowa, it's 100%. So.
You done?
Yeah, I think Susan was first, and then I'll get to you, Jim. Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead, Susan.
I'm just curious, do you prefer to have the payments prior to each class, or could we give you the whole years in one?
You can certainly do that if you'd like. Whatever, yeah, if that's convenient for you, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, just remember that the diocese is doing 1/3, and if you have arranged with your parish to do 1/3, we'd rather not get into a refund situation. So
okay.
And if there's a question, just go ahead and you can pay 1/3 now, and then if the parish isn't coming through, then we can talk about that later. Whatever.
Okay.
And if there's scholarship money to be applied, we'll do that. From Mark. Yeah, Jim.
I was asking you a while back about conversation in Compline. Where does that? I know two Tuesdays. I knew it used to be on Tuesday. And of course, 2 Tuesdays a month we're going to be doing the praxis and the colloquium.
Right.
Where does conversation in Compline come in? Because I know you had told me to get back with you when school started to learn more about that, or find out more about that.
I think we usually do Compline at the end of praxis. I'm not sure about colloquium.
Okay.
Casey might be able to answer that.
But we're not, but Don, we're doing away with that every Tuesday conversation.
Correct.
In Compline.
Correct.
That was just in the gap.
That was when we couldn't get together during Zoom, and so we created additional community time. We won't need to do that this year, we hope.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, concerns, comments?
Susan Olson has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Susan, I didn't see you. Please.
That's okay. Thank you. Just a clarification on the tuition. So we paid the amount, say $210 or whatever, and then the diocese and the parish pays on top of that?
No. It would be 1/3 each. So if your parish is one of those that collaborates, they would pay 70, the diocese pays 70, so you only do 70.
Okay. And so we don't need to talk to our parish about it?
Oh, I definitely, because the parish is not automatic. Okay.
Okay.
Some parishes have participated, most I think have, but some have not. Some don't have the means. So it's not a guaranteed that your parish will kick in. You have to make those arrangements, but the diocese is automatic.
Okay, good.
If you're in Western Kansas, or West Missouri, or Iowa.
And then on top of that, just as part of your budgeting, you know, every class is a little bit different, but we tend to say on average, books will run you $50 to $75 a month. Now, if you are willing to shop used in advance, you can and can wait for, you know, third-party sellers to deliver. If you're not under the crunch, you can find really good deals shopping for books online. But if you want to figure that into your budgeting for the year, you need to add that as well.
And you might want to check with your parish library. Sometimes they have a book that we use there in the library. We also have a section of our library that is textbooks that it's a shelf right next to Casey and I's office. So and we also have some books inside the office that are applicable to some classes. So yeah, check out those sources too. But yeah, this is where we try to get the list of all the textbooks together at the beginning of the year, so you have plenty of time in advance to find the books that you need at a reasonable price. And Amazon still seems to be the best clearinghouse for that, for better or for worse. I don't know if you want to send Jeff Bezos to space or not, but it's just so convenient. You know, it lists a bunch of booksellers together there, and there's, for better or for worse, there's really nothing like it out there. Anything else? So just keep in mind sort of the kind of way that the schedule rolls, right? Like, let's take August when we're all together. You will get your syllabi for September the Monday after the August session. So that's when the next class begins. It begins the Monday after the session. Then your final assignments for that class will be due the Friday before the next session. So assignments for August will be due that, I think it's Friday the 13th this time. But you'll have, those will be your August assignments will be due September 13th, Friday, and then that following Monday, the October classes begin, right? And always the faculty will be turning in grades at the end of the following month. So your August grades will be submitted by September 30, your September grades by October 31, and so forth, right? So you'll get kind of used to that rhythm of how it works, you know. You're in effect finishing the prior class the Friday before the focus session, beginning the next class the Monday, you know, after the focus session.
Don, I would also point out, I'm guessing most everybody's found this already, but our April session is early this
right,
year
because of Easter.
Avoid Palm Sunday.
Yeah, our usual is it's the second Saturday of the month and the following Sunday. That's where we've kind of locked in. We found it was just really helpful. So we have run over Mother's Day, we've run over Palm Sunday, we've run over Pentecost, but you know, Easter, you just can't do that, right? So we had to move that one forward 1 week. So that the May class then will begin actually not the Monday after the session, but the next Monday, as it were, right? And now we'll have this new rhythm where praxis will happen the Tuesday after the focus session, right? And then colloquium the week after that, Casey?
Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to be sure to keep both of those events, which usually happen within, as Don explained, within the face-to-face weekend. We wanted to keep those away from the week in the lead up to class, because y'all are going to be busy. So so to keep that Tuesday night free, so you can be reading and writing papers and doing all the things that I remember doing before heading to Topeka for a weekend. So those two.
I have to tell you, I'm just real excited about this new flow of classes that we'll be having in Topeka, because it used to be, you know, we had praxis and colloquium Saturday morning, and you'd start the main class at 1 p.m. and go all the way till 9 o'clock at night, and then the next morning, and it just seemed like things were really tight. And now we're going to be able to start, you know, the classes right Saturday morning, be done by dinner, have Eucharist actually at 5:30, and then have dinner, and then have special community and spiritual things Saturday evening in a much more relaxed atmosphere. I just think it's going to feel a lot less compressed and tight.
I would use more humane, quite frankly. It's rough. I've been there, I did it. It's rough. Right. So you'll have 30-minute breaks between 90-minute sessions so that you have time to stretch your body and decompress and visit with your colleagues and just take a little break, right? Call your family if you need to, whatever. So just to give us all some more breathing room.
That's more in line with the nature of this enterprise, because the wonderful thing about theological education is really three things at once. It's, you know, the academic learning, the book study, but it's also communal formation and spiritual formation. It's all three, right? And so I think this new schedule is going to really be able to accommodate that much better. And I'm just excited about it. It's one of the things we learned from COVID, you know, because you just can't be on Zoom that long, you know. So we got thinking, well, that's probably not all that humane face to face either. Right? So we'll see how it works, but I'm very excited about it.
Will there be sessions on Sunday like we did this last time, didn't we? Didn't we have something on Sunday?
Yes.
Will there be a session on Sunday?
Yeah, we have it. Well, we have breakfast and a devotional. And then we have like 3.5, 4 hours of class on Sunday morning, and then end with noonday prayer, where there's almost always a homily, usually by a student. So you want to stay for that noonday prayer to support one of your peers who will be sharing the word. You'll be getting, we'll be establishing a rota, so you'll get invitations to different months to, you know, preside at one of the daily offices. To be a lector at one of the daily offices, and upper class people, especially seniors, you'll get an invitation to preach at that concluding noonday. By the way, another thing that I want to announce, this I think affects just a few of you who are only doing 1 year with us, but Father Art Rathbun, who was at the retreat last week, had a very serious heart attack. And the latest I heard, in case you may have an update, but is that his organs weren't affected, his mental wasn't affected, but his heart is only functioning at about a quarter capacity, and they're not sure that they can do angioplasty or a pacemaker. So at least for the first 6 months of our new academic year, he will not be able to be a colloquium leader as he has been the whole time that BKSM has existed. So we're working on a replacement for him, but we're really saddened by that, and we just want to ask you all to keep Father Art continually in your prayers. He's been a really vital pillar at Bishop Kemper, a great supporter and a visionary, and we just hope he gets through this and has some good time to recover. You want to say anything more about that? I know you saw him, yesterday, Reverend Casey?
Yeah, I saw him yesterday. Day to day. So he's showing some improvement day to day, but every next step they take could cause a very serious or catastrophic event. So we just we're cautiously optimistic things are moving in the right direction, but it's not great.
Nope. So, it was a tough week.
It's been a really tough week.
We have a wonderful layperson and spiritual director at Mother Casey's Parish in Wamego called Merlene Winkler. I think some of you may know Merlene, who had taken a number of classes at BKSM and just was a big supporter, and she's in hospice now and not expected to live too much longer.
She passed away on Saturday.
Oh, I had not heard that. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness. Yeah, well, God bless her. May God receive her into glory. I'm glad she didn't suffer much longer.
It was a holy death.
I'm really glad to hear that, although we will sorely miss her.
Absolutely.
Please keep her husband Richard in your prayers. Richard has also taken a number of courses at BKSM and is a member of our community. And then our alum, Deacon Stevie Carter, who's at St. Michael's and All Angels, his stepdaughter Emily died of a brain tumor early Sunday. And I just learned today that Stevie had been kind of holding himself together, but he has a heart problem, so he's been in the hospital the last 2 days. He went into the hospital like almost immediately after Emily's death.
He has really severe pneumonia, the last I heard.
Yeah. So he was supposed to be released this afternoon. I'm awaiting news. I was able to go last Friday and administer last rites to Emily, which was a very holy experience, unforgettable. So it was just a bad week for our BKSM community. It really was. But we trust in God's grace and the promise of eternal life. And we've lost members before. Mother Virginia Brown, who was our spirituality teacher before Brother James, and one of the real founders of Bishop Kemper School, fantastic lay leader, Larry Bingham, who we lost to cancer a few years ago. So we move on, surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. Any other questions or comments about any of this? And of course, if you think of something later.
Anything not procedural or sort of policy related? Is there any sort of open mic? How y'all doing?
Back to food allergies from earlier. I am deathly allergic to mushrooms. So would that be, I would get with you on that, or?
Yeah. If you, Blake, if you would send me a note, that way I've got it in writing. Send me a note, and we've got a list for the caterer. So I will add it to the list. Hi, Karen.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Blake, what was that allergen, please?
Mushrooms.
Okay.
It's also something to keep in mind when we have Friday evening potlucks. There's a number of people that will come in Friday evening because they come from a distance, and even people that don't have sometimes come just like to hang out, And so we try to have a potluck on Friday evening and just some informal discussion at greater length than we have at the reception on Saturday. So yeah, it's good to think about. Thank you, Dodie, that don't bring mushrooms or peanuts to these events, because we have some people who really have a problem with that. If there's other things like that, do let us know. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah. But I'd say the main thing that's changed in the past year is just, our adopting the anti-racism covenant written by our good bishop in the Diocese of Missouri, and really trying to live into all that, what that means, and that's a work in progress, and we're learning, and you can help us to figure out how do we move forward so that we are part of the solution. We're part of a new and better age, where we could leave some of the terrible things of the past behind and truly treat all of God's children with the dignity that they deserve. And so we're committed to that process, but sometimes it feels like sort of stumbling forward, because especially in this part of the world, we're not a very diverse church, frankly, on racial and ethnic grounds, right? We don't have very many people who are not of European background in the church. And so it creates some special challenges for us to think about, how do we with integrity become part of the solution? So just know that that's one of the many examples of how BKSM is still under construction, right? And we're a pioneering thing. And so we really welcome you to that. I got a great idea today from one of our students about collecting prayers written by students. I just thought that was a lovely idea. And so, we've just had lots of things that develop because of good ideas and initiatives taken by our students. And so see yourself not just as a student here, but as a builder, because this is still a young school, and we're committed to being flexible and adapting as needs be. And each of us contributes to that. And that's one of the things I love about it. Anything else? It's been really appreciate your attention.
I do have
Yeah,
a
right.
question. Sorry. Are there going to be like online forums as well for classes, or is the class time really just going to be like in person via Zoom, whatever? Or is it kind of like an online component as well with like discussion questions or anything like that?
Not usually.
Okay.
Usually, you know, you're reading in the 4 weeks prior to class, and you know, having the 9 hours of concentrated time together, and then working on final assignments after. But a number of times in the past, students have created a private Facebook group or something like that that allows them to have conversation that you don't need the faculty dean looking over your shoulder. You know what I mean? And
sure. I was thinking more assignment wise.
But sometimes students do, you know, ask questions like, what do you, you know, about assignments is a way of, you know, and like I said, more learning happens from each other than from the faculty. And that I learned that when I was at Nazarene Seminary. You know, I caught on to that really quickly, that my peers were teaching me more than the faculty, and that was fine, you know. And so, so if you have any questions about, some of you probably are really technological whizzes, and it's, you know, I'm an older generation on that, but Mother Casey's helped in the past to set up anything like that. So if you want to have some kind of a forum or chat room or whatever, we really encourage that.
And then another question, since I wasn't able to make it last week due to work obligations, can someone explain what colloquium is?
Mm-hmm. You want to give that a shot, since you're a colloquium leader, Mother Casey?
Sure. So colloquium is small group formation.
Okay.
So, and it's cohort based. So anyone who is a first year student, priest, deacon, or lay track this year is in a colloquium group with me. Second years are deacon, priest, and second year lay track will be with Deacon Yvonne right now. And we're working on those who are Anglican studies and third years on a priest track. So I know that's a little bit in the works. So we're getting that figured out. But that was, so when you had that time with Father Art during the retreat, that was sort of the colloquium group right there. So, and it's a time, I mean, and from year to year it varies. So it's unstructured time. There are no assignments usually for that. There's no reading or pre-work or anything like that, but it's time for check-in, for mutual support. I use a group discernment model to help practice group discernment. A few years ago, we walked through as a colloquium group the way of love practices and sort of reflected on those and where we are in our spiritual lives and discernment and vocation and all the things. So, so that's a 90 minutes once a month with your cohort.
Okay, thank you.
And it's very much related to the importance of spiritual practices and spiritual life. So that's why we begin with the retreat, and then the first class that most people take is that Christian spirituality class with Brother James, where he will have you write a rule for your cohort. So one of the things that can happen in colloquium is to refer back to that rule and see how it's going, right? So the colloquium is very much the continuation of that spiritual formation and communal formation as a group. We really believe in the importance of community spiritual disciplines.
This might be a question that was better suited to last week, but when it comes to secondary sources for papers, you know, like when I was in nursing school, there's online databases for medical journals and this and that. Is there something for religious and theological works, or is it just, am I hoping my local library has some things on hand?
There are certain things like, but they usually require payment for access. religious research, something or other. If you have access to a local theological library, like then you can tap into there. But there's usually a cost involved, unfortunately. But things like Anglican Theological Review have online databases. A lot of the biblical journals do now. The one thing that we just really say avoid is don't use Wikipedia, don't use encyclopedias. That's not a proper secondary source at this level. Yeah, Ryan?
Sorry, I worked in the theological library. So you can interlibrary loan something. So if you find a journal article that you think would be helpful, if you can use your public library database to do that and then request an interlibrary loan. It does take longer, so you'd need to prep for it. But I did that at Nazarene Theological Seminary for people all the time. So
the concern I have is that not all local libraries have the search engine for even to locate the article that might be helpful to you.
That's fair. Yeah. Sorry about that. Wasn't thinking.
But certainly books might be like,
oh yeah,
that's my trick. So my trick was finding something resourced or listed on Amazon or wherever, and then just given the ISBN to my local library. And they were, and this was in Kirksville, not Kirksville, Hayes, America. And they were super fast. Like the smaller town library was super fast at getting, I don't know how they work their magic, but it really worked well. So I did not use that as much for journal articles as I did for books.
Yeah, Google could be some help with even with journal articles, and just if you type in the topic and see what comes up, and just make sure it's a reputable journal. I mean, there's a lot of conservative fundamentalist stuff out there, but you'll see some American Academy of Religion and stuff listings, and that might help you to go to the local library, as Ryan is suggesting. Yeah, that interlibrary loan is a great thing, and it's available at any library.
If you've participated in EFM, you can have access to the Oxford Biblical Studies.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes.
That's great.
It's really wonderful.
Everybody should have at least a friend who's in EFM, right? The list of acceptable journals is very long, Don. According to, it varies by topic. It's a good question to ask your instructor. And one of the things that I would say that I would encourage that isn't done enough is, even before you've met together in class, if you have questions to your instructor, email them. You'll have their email as soon as you get the syllabus. So if you're in the syllabus, will tell you what kind of final assignment you're going to be working on. So you may begin to develop a topic and ask them, well, what would be some good journals on this topic, and they can. It's a really long list, but it varies from subject to subject.
And I found when I was a student that faculty were only too glad to help you give better shape to your research topic or the question asked. So your faculty, again, I've said this before, want you to succeed, right? This is not a weed out process. They are committed to your theological and spiritual formation. So they will help you, particularly in these early first months as you're stretching those academic reins again after maybe some years at rest. They will do everything they can to help navigate you in the right direction. So will your dean.
Very good. Good questions. Anything else tonight? I said, never hesitate. As a question occurs to you later, pop us an email, We are only too happy to hear from you. And let's say that I'm in the middle of a conference in, someplace. I will at least write you back and say, hey, I'm in this conference, but I will get back to you just as soon as I can. So your emails won't be left hanging in the air, wondering if I ever got them or not. Would you attest to the truth of that, Casey?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm like, good grief, I know you're in meetings all afternoon, Dean.
The good thing about emails is even when you're in a meeting, you can often write an email.
That's true. You can multitask. So I had an email a couple weeks ago from Archdeacon Monty Giddens, who's now the president of our board of trustees, and I set it aside because I'm like, I need to figure out the answer to that. And then you know what happens, the inbox avalanche. And he sent me a note about a week later. He's like, you must be on vacation because you always respond promptly. I'm like, nope, not in this case. I just forgot. So, but I would say that Dawn and Fran and I, all three of us work really hard to be as responsive as we can, as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And in response to your good question, Don, yes, we are developing a directory that you'll all have access to, so that you there'll be a picture, there'll be, you know, all kinds of Deacon Fran does that, and there's even an app for it that you can add to your smartphone. So you'll have an app where you can just look up each other, and you'll have all the contact information that you. It's up to you if you don't want people to have your email, or if you don't want people to have your phone number. Most people are fine with that, you know, but and then so you give permission to list it, and then you'll all have that ability to be in contact with each other quite readily.
We're going to take pictures in August. That email will be coming from Fran, so you don't have to worry about selfie shot or whatever. So we'll take pictures in August. For those of you we see, for those of you who are in Dodge City or otherwise remote, we'll be asking for you to send in pictures.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, you have the syllabus that was sent to you, and if you look at the address line, you'll see all the other people in their class are listed there. So emails, at least, you have for your class, people in your class. I think this is going to be a great year. I'm really looking forward to it. I just feel it. I don't know. This is my 8th year, and I just feel a real sense of excitement coming back out of COVID. Although we have to watch this, Delta variant and some of this stuff going on, but at least we can meet face to face again, and exciting new facilities, new Diocese Missouri joining us, with some students, a new cohort in Dodge City. I just think it's going to be a great year. So let's continue to pray for each other and for the school, and God has shown us again that wonderful things can happen.